In today's show, we're talking about specialists, ways that you can address certain categories towards the end of your draft. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $5 and if you bet $5, you actually get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. Quick little update on shows. Yesterday I did a show talking about first round picks, the way that they're not as important as you think, but also me going through top 20 players across different formats. We are going to be having some shows coming up on second-year players, third-year players, fourth-year players, a punting discussion show as well will be coming out, and then we will start team preview shows, fantasy team preview shows at the end of next week. There is still spots available in the FBI LOFB Fantasy Basketball World Cup. I've given out my 288 spots. The guys over at FBI, B-Dub, Matt Lawson, Kingy, those guys have got spots available. They've given out some of the spots. So go look at FBIbasketball.com. Go follow B-Dub at Hidden Upside on Twitter. Go follow FBI Basketball. Go follow Matt Lawson. Go follow Adam King and see how they're giving away spots into the Fantasy Basketball World Cup. I will also be doing the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl again. Last season, we did that with 360 teams for category leagues, 360 teams for points leagues. I think I'm going to go bigger this season. I think we're going to go bigger. Probably not for points leagues. We didn't quite have that many people interested in points leagues. We got the 360, but we didn't have too many more. We'll see. Maybe we do. Maybe we go higher than that. We're going to go really, really big. It's going to be slightly different format with hard games, caps, with extended rosters, and the Battle Royal at the end. We're going to do that. The announcements for that will start in the team preview podcasts, which will start towards the end of next week. That's when we're going to start those. All right? So that is coming very, very soon. So be on the lookout for all of that content. Basketball Monster, of course, is open as well for memberships. So what we're doing here is you do a draft, you set your team up, and at the end of the draft, there are two ways to go about things. As a general rule, I want to go through and hit upside with my last couple of picks. But if there is a specific category that you're looking for, and be really cautious of this. Be really cautious whether you're using Draft Tracker on Basketball Monster, whether you're using Yahoo's projected standings or another draft site's projected standings based on their stats, where you look at it and go, oh, I actually really need this category, and chasing a guy with no upside in round 13 just so you can hit that category to make your projected standings look right or look good. It's that sort of strategy is pretty useless if you're just chasing projected standings wins. It doesn't give you success. But if you are looking in your final 3 picks or so and you go, oh, I really actually need someone in this category, I'm going to go through players here for the major 8 categories plus 3-point percentage, in case you're including that, of guys who have either a ranking on Yahoo, an ADP on Yahoo, an ADP on Fantrax, a ranking on ESPN, or an ADP on ESPN, one of those 5 criteria that is outside the top 120, meaning for somebody, a large chunk of you people watching the show, that they could be available after round 10. Standard 12-team league is what I'm always going to talk about. 12-team league, 10 rounds, 120 players, then we're looking at bench after that. So who is available that might be able to help you in each of the categories, who somewhere on one of the sites has a rank or ADP that places them outside the top 120, enabling you to help that category in one of your last picks. I hope that premise is clear. It sounded a little confusing. I do hope that it's clear. And that will bring us to talk about it. Warning.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
All right, let's look at the points category. It's often said by me, but others as well, that it is hard to generate big scoring at the end of a fantasy draft. And the reason it's said is because it's true. Most of the top scorers are found, and we're going to do a categorical scarcity show later on in the preseason, are found at the top. The big scorers, the big boys, are good fantasy producers as a general rule. So to get big scoring in your team, you got to get it early. But that doesn't mean there aren't guys who can score or guys who can't score later on. You're not going to get the 27-point scorer, but you might be looking at a bloke who scores 17 points versus a guy that scores 12 points. So I guess we're looking at players who maybe don't drag your team's overall average down in the last rounds and keep them around average. And there are still quite a few players, depending on the site, who could be available for you late to help bolster the points category. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can see next to the players' names there are letters. E stands for ESPN. Guess what Y stands for? Yeah, it's Yahoo. And F stands for Fantrax. Simple enough? Meaning that on those sites, either that player's rank or ADP is outside the top 120, meaning theoretically, there are going to be times where that player is available after the 10th round. And for some reason, on ESPN, Terry Rozier fits that category. I don't really know why he's pushed down that far. That's, again, some of the ESPN numbers are very odd. They don't make any sense. But there is a gigantic proportion of people who play on ESPN. So when Terry Rozier is ranked at 129, he's a good scoring option. It's not going to be often that he falls there, but he is ranked there. So pay attention to it. The man on the street, Jordan Clarkson.
JordanClarkson.
It's actually the opposite for him. On ESPN, he's not ranked or ADP outside the top 120, but on Yahoo and on Fantrax, he is. I really like Jordan Clarkson as a late round player. People will say, well, is there any upside in him? I think there is actually a little bit of upside in him, but I also think that he's significantly better than a guy that should be going at 130 or 140 or something like that. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So he's a great option for points late. We go to Big Ben Mathurin in Indiana as well. When on all platforms, he's potentially available. Now, he could start, probably will, probably sees more minutes. Hopefully does something that's not scoring. Hopefully he learns to pass at some point or hit shots. But he's going to score. He's going to get to the line. He's going to get minutes. He's a great option for that late. I actually snagged him for a couple of bucks, I think, in the auction mock draft the other day. For that reason, really. Rowan Barrett. We know he's shithouse. I don't think he's a very good real-life player. I know that I'm never going to get defensive stats or efficiency out of him. I'm aware of that. But he is going to score. Probably not to the degree that he has in the past, but he's not going to be out there with 10 points a game. He's going to score. And Yahoo, he's not available, weirdly enough. But on Fantrax and ESPN, you can find him outside the top 120. And that's totally okay. I know that you'll tell me, well, Josh, he's actually ranked 230th. And I've probably been guilty of saying that at times as well. Because it's true. When you look at those straight ranking numbers, that is where he is. But it's all about nuance, and we talk so much about gaps between rankings as you go down an ordinal list, and how finding need and finding upside becomes more important than 200 versus 160. It just does. Don't anchor yourself to ranking numbers. RJ Barrett can help in points. Austin Reeves is available allegedly on ESPN leagues outside the top 120. I don't think that's going to stick. I think he's going to get moved up. But you might see him slide. I really like him as a scoring option. And then Jaden Ivey. Well, he's available everywhere. Another guy like Mathurin that I grabbed for like $2 in that auction mock draft. Is he going to be somewhat squeezed with Cade there? I think so, yes. But I thought he did okay down the stretch. It's year 2. We can expect some big jumps, I think, from Jaden. We're going to do a second year show coming up soon. And that's really good value to get someone like Jaden Ivey last couple of rounds as a second-year guard who can score a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty good, I think. Pretty good. Interesting to see Mathurin and Ivey. And this happens. Rookies get overvalued. Second-year players get undervalued. When second-year players nearly always are better than rookies. Happens a lot. Another bunch of points guys we can take a look at. Look at that. Another second-year player, Shaden Sharp. Now, his value is probably pumped a little higher on some sites due to the alleged potential, not alleged, well, I guess it's alleged because it hasn't happened, Damian Lillard trade. Sharp's outside the top 120 on ESPN. He did some really good stuff at the end of last season when everybody was out, so it's hard to fully translate that across. And even if Lillard does go, there is still Scoot, there is still Simmons, there is still Thibault, there is still whatever players come back. But they believe in him a lot. Norman Powell, one of the best out here for this, available everywhere. Is his upside high? Not really. He's a scorer who relies upon efficiency. Minutes are going to be tougher to come by, I think, especially if Kawhi and Paul George play more than they do last season, which you'd think is probable, but not guaranteed, and a full season of Westbrook, but he's still there. I got Miles Bridges on this list because he qualifies based on the criteria I used. Because his ADP Miles Bridges is 136 on ESPN. Now, unless every ESPN user is morally completely against drafting Miles Bridges, I don't think is the case. And you can have that decision if you want. Like, Miles Bridges, totally shit bloke. Don't think he should be in the NBA. All right, that's my opinion on it. But if he is available in fantasy, I am going to draft him. And I think he's falling a little bit too low. And to get a guy like Bridges at 136, where his ADP is on ESPN, is pretty insane to me. Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, I'm off Bojan this season, but not at that price, I'm not. 135 ADP on Yahoo. Well, that's not true. Again, if we're really hitting upside, he doesn't have any of it. But he could be an 18, 19 point per game scorer that you're getting at 135 ADP on Yahoo, 126 on Fantrax. ESPN's got him a little bit higher. His rank on ESPN's 96, which is obviously crazy. There's no way you take him there. But when you're looking, if you go, wow, I really actually need to help myself with some points in round 11, well, Bojan's the guy you go for. And then, hit some upside with the other two picks. It's all about balance. You can go upside with all three of your last picks or four, but what you don't want to do is go stale, crusty-ass old bastards with all of those last picks. Get one of them and then shoot for the moon with the other guys and see what you get out of it. I think that is probably the best way to go about that. Emmanuel Quickly, I think he might be a bit squeezed compared to last season, but honestly, all it takes is a longer-term injury on that team to really bump him up. He's available on Yahoo and ESPN outside the top 120. And then another one that I really like, much like Jordan Clarkson, and again, I don't like Colin Sexton as a player. I don't think anyone should base their real-life NBA team about him being a star. I don't think he's good. But I do think that in the last rounds, when he probably should be the favorite to be a starter on this Jazz team, that, I'll take him. Efficient. Maybe he gets 4 or 5 assists, maybe. Maybe he scores 20 points and hits 2.5 threes. And hits his free throws at a really high rate. He's going really, really late in drafts. And I'd be happy to take that risk on a starter upside level player. Starter, it sounds bad. I don't think he's I think you know what I mean. Anyway, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL is back, and you can get everything cracking with incredible offers on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer that you won't want to miss. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Let's look at three-pointers. Often when I start these shows, the first segment goes a little bit longer because I'm going into a lot of detail about the players, but you'll see a lot of these names repeated through different categories. Threes is a very common category that you can just get everywhere. You can get them at the end of a draft, you can get them off the waiver wire, and these are guys who are, so don't like, when you're talking about a Des Bane in the early rounds, we look at his overall ranking metrics and it will tell you that he's the 18th best player because he's turnovers and he's high threes, but your replacement is important. Understanding that you might be able to get some threes from somebody off the waiver wire or stream that category. It doesn't mean that Bane's useless. And sorry to pick on old Des here, but it doesn't mean he's useless. It just means that maybe some of that ranking metric upside is maybe not as real as it seems. So let's look at threes. These guys, again, we're all talking about an ability for them to be found outside the top 120. Keegan Murray. On Yahoo and ESPN, there is the potential that he sits outside the top 120. We know he hits a lot of threes. At the moment, he does nothing else. Maybe he can do more, But he's one of those guys that's going to give you good threes at the end of a draft, and he actually has upside to do more. So I like it. Rozier, we talked about already. Quentin Grimes, available everywhere. Yahoo, Fantrax, ESPN. I think he's going to start for the Knicks. I think he's quite a good player. I think he has a chance to hit 2.5 threes. Now, it might only be 12 points, but he's going to hit a lot of threes. He's a very good shooter. And you're looking to help that category, he's there to do it. The Winter Soldier, Max Strus, also available on all platforms. Is he going to start for Cleveland? I would say almost definitely yes. I don't think it's a great move, but I think they will. And yeah, there is competition from Okoro and Levert to get some of those minutes. But when we're looking for threes, Strus's role is there. Hopefully he hits them at a higher rate than he did in Miami. But that's what he can do. Timmy Hardaway. I think the Mavericks would love to trade him away. I don't think they're going to start him. But he's not going to be in a situation where he plays 17 minutes. He's going to play 26 to 30, I would guess. And probably hit 2.5 threes a game. And give you 15, 16 points. He's available everywhere. So when you're looking for a threes boost, doesn't mean you have to grab Tim Hardaway, but you also have to know, well, if I want threes, I can just add Hardaway off the wire, yeah? Like I can add him in, and when the schedule makes sense, I can get him. Or I can get Strus. Or I can get Grimer. I can get all these guys. I didn't even get a chance to do this for Grimes because I forgot.
This briefcase and this haircut.
And there's Malik Beasley, who's available everywhere. Why is he available everywhere? Because he's bad. Yeah, I know. But his competition for minutes is Grayson Allen. And maybe he starts over Grayson Allen. Maybe they play 25 minutes apiece and sort of share some responsibilities. And they both hit 2.2 threes. What are each of those guys going to do apart from shoot threes? The answer is nothing. Now, Beasley is one of the most hot and cold players in the NBA, but there is an opportunity there for him. And even on my projections, which are pretty soft on him, he looks like a solid enough option to have a crack in there for threes. Kevin Huerter, outside the top 120 on all sites. Fair enough. Absolutely, in my mind, zero upside. He was also one of those guys that was subject to Mike Brown's rotation roulette, where if he didn't hit a couple of shots early, he'd play 21 minutes, or he'd play 30 minutes, and he'd shoot 50%, or he'd shoot 20%. It was all over the shop. But he's going to hit threes. That's what he does. He doesn't do anything else. So he's there. He's available. Bogdanovic. Bogdan, I think, is getting slept on somewhat. It is hard to see huge minutes for him with Trey and DeJounte there. And they did start to drop down somewhat once Quinn Snyder took over. But the guy's still really good. The guy is going to get opportunities. He hit 40+% of his threes second half of the season. He handles the ball. When you're looking for a solid enough option later rounds, he's there. Is this controversial to say, but Luke Kennard is the best pure three-point shooter in the NBA. The difficulty of his shots is not the same as Steph Curry's. So when we're talking the best shooter, Steph is that guy, right? Best three-point creator, let's say. But as just a pure shooter, Kennard is the best shooter. 49% from three last season, 45 the year before that, 46 the year before that. Those percentages are unmatched, probably at any point through NBA history. Haven't looked at that. And Kennard could start to begin the season. He could hit 3 threes a game for the first 25 games while Jar is out. Yeah, so he's got some really interesting value. I don't know whether Corey Kispert's going to start in Washington, but like Luke Kennard and like all his fellow white brethren, loves shooting a three, absolutely loves it. What he did at the end of last season probably doesn't have really any bearing on this season because he was doing it when Porzingis was out and Kuzma was out and Beal was out. And while two of those guys aren't on the team, yeah, Poole arrives and Tyus Jones is there. And he still might not even start, but he's going to hit threes. I do have this guy on this list, and I know that he's injured.
There is no just Ken.
Yeah, it's Trey Murphy. Because it was announced today that he is having surgery on his meniscus and he's out 10 to 12 weeks. And Woj says, it might be back middle of November. Woj, Adrian, my man, there is no way. There is no way. I'm sorry. 10 weeks is cool. But whenever there is a knee surgery timetable put out there, just go the longer end of it and add 2 to 3 weeks. You will come out on top if you look at it that way. Come out on top is a relative phrase. You will win the injury prediction return game. The vast majority of time is if you go to the longer end of the timetable and put a week or 2 on it. So while Woj is saying mid-November is a possibility, he's got knee surgery on a meniscus, which wipe many players out for an entire season. Derrick Rose, James Wiseman, they're 2 that come immediately to mind. Colin Sexton. So I put Trey Murphy on this list because he's a great last round draft and stash NIL. Love that. But also just to update you on the injury status of him. 10 to 12 weeks from now. 10 weeks puts at 17 November. 12 puts at 1st of December. I think middle of December is a better estimate. But that also gives you January, February, March for him to play and be useful. It sucks because he won't be able to establish himself as a starter and he'd be a little bit rusty coming back. But he's a good IL slash stash. And then the next guy, and I hope this is the right sound.
Nice, Gary!
It is. Gaz Trent is available on ESPN outside the top 120. I don't know if Gaz is going to start in Toronto or if it's going to be Dennis Schroeder. And I know that once Pirtle arrived last season, Trent's minutes dropped significantly. He was playing like 22, 23 in a lot of those games. But even though I'm not the biggest Gaza Trent fan, there is clear value in him as a later round player who is going to shoot threes. Don't love his game, but he's going to shoot threes. Let's look at rebounds. Quite a few young big men are completely misvalued. Completely. But we'll start with Steve Adams, who is going to get a lot of rebounds. His knee injury is okay. Brandon Clark is out. And Adams is available on every site late. Now, the upside on Steven Adams is very low. And I know what? He shoots a horrible free throw percentage. I'm well aware of that. But that doesn't mean that you can't take him. And that doesn't mean that his ranking precludes him from being useful. He's going to get rebounds. Maybe double digits. We've got the passport legend Jalen Duren, who is on ESPN, available allegedly outside the top 120. That's insane. I'm not worried about Marvin Bagley III or Marvin Bagley IV taking minutes away from him. If Monty Williams does that, well, I lose, again, all respect for Monty Williams as a coach. It's not quite true, but it's a pretty bad evaluation. But Duren, I think, is relatively safe compared to how some people are panicked about him. And then we have Jusuf Nurkic.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
On Fantrax, Nurkic is available outside the top 120. Other sites, not so much, but he's still on those other sites. I think he's outside the top 100 on every site, which is a little weird. And the reason I say that, he's outside the top 100 on every site. The reason I say it's a little weird is, if you haven't heard me say this, welcome. If you have, I'm going to repeat it. People just assume that Nurkic is getting traded when Lillard is. Why? I don't know. Because this is the logic that people are using. Well, he's got a terrible contract. They'd love to get off that contract. Why? What else are they using that money for? Why would they love to give up an asset to get rid of Jusuf Nurkic? If Joe Cronin does that, well, I will roast him forever. Because it is absolutely ridiculous on a team that is rebuilding. Giving up an asset to get off a contract is insane stuff. Especially when you don't have a young center behind him or anyone that he is blocking minutes for. Absolutely insane stuff if anyone does that. Look at their depth chart. Is Jabari Walker going to have to play backup center? Are they actually... No, Moses Brown is not a starter of the future. Is Moses Brown going to get minutes? Jesus Christ. So, yeah, I love Nurkic late. Maybe it hurts. Maybe it doesn't. Doesn't matter when you have to get him that late. This one is interesting.
Oh, hi, Mark.
On Yahoo and ESPN, allegedly Mark Williams can be found outside the top 120. Yahoo still has him ranked in, obviously, the completely wrong spot at a ranking of 306, which defies logic. Anyone want to explain it? You can't. It's wrong. I'm not worried about Big Dick Nick. I'm not worried about PJ Washington playing center. He played like 0 minutes at center last season. Mark's a great pick if you can get him late. If your league's switched on, you won't. But if your league's not, you will. And then we go to Jonas Valanciunas.
Jonas Valanciunas.
Now, I'm not big on Valanciunas this season, but I didn't expect Yahoo to rank him outside the top 120. I actually sort of agree with it, but when you're looking for rebounds, getting him late is solid. He's better. He's probably better than that. My worry is that how he plays next to Zion and Ingram, but getting him late, no worries. And then one of the best rebound options, who is definitely available everywhere, is Kevon Looney. Now, be really careful with Looney's ranking numbers. It'll make him seem like he's this great fantasy option. He's not. He gets low turnovers and big rebounds with good field goal percentage. That's not a great option. It's useful for certain little plug-and-play scenarios. He's also in a spot where he might get squeezed a little bit if they need to start Chris Paul. Their center depth is woeful, clearly. Šarić is the guy behind him, but he's never pushing to 28 minutes, I don't think. Some other rebound options we can look at. There's the big fella in New York, Mitchie Robinson.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
on ESPN, he's outside the top 120. Again, really limited player, but he's going to get rebounds. Ivica Zubats. I think Mason Plumlee does hurt him quite a bit, but he's still a good option for that. On ESPN, he's available. And of course, Dan Gafford. I don't know why. Again, we talk about Nurkic. Who the hell is the backup center? Mike Muscala? Old mate? Anthony Gill?
Let's get it on, Gilly.
Someone got upset that I didn't drop the Gilly on Anthony Gill the other day. There you go. I apologize. Gafford is going to have to play more than 23 minutes a night without any question at all. He's a lovely, lovely pick. The best rebounder of all time, Andre Drummond, is outside the top 120 on every draft site. Absolutely, of course, he should be. He can grab 6 rebounds a night in 19 minutes. And that's like average fantasy production. I'm not suggesting that you draft Andre Drummond. You shouldn't. But when you are thinking about it, well, I don't really have enough rebounds. He's there. Like, you can get him. You can add him in to help you in that category. Punch Bob's outside the top 120 on Fantrax, Bobby Portis. His value goes up anytime Brook or Giannis misses a game, and then it drops back down. So he's a guy that is probably worth like a hold or a stash just to see what happens. Because his production's not terrible when those guys are in, but it jumps up a lot when they're out. And the other one is the big fella, Alf Stewart.
Is that you, Mr. Stewart?
Well, who the hell else do you think it'd be? Get in here, you pair of flaming galahs.
I think Stewart's going to start at power forward for the Pistons. I think it's a terrible decision, but they are going to do it. He really didn't play any center minutes last season either. I don't think that's going to happen for him now. I think he still can be a solid enough rebound option who is available very late. Maybe he can shoot threes better. I don't know. I think he's a backup, not a starter, and they'd be much better starting Boyan and Assar, but I don't think they're going to do that, especially initially. But Stewart's at least someone there who can help you in that category. Let's look at assists, and the number one guy there is one of the most risky propositions, and that is Ben Simmons. On Yahoo, Fantrax, and ESPN, he is available outside the top 120. And let me tell you something right now. You might not be a big Ben Simmons fan. I'm not really either. You might think that he is never going to play meaningful minutes again. Well, I don't believe that. But when we're talking in your last 3 rounds of a draft, a literal All-NBA player 2 years ago who is claiming, unless he's Liz Cambridging it, he's claiming he's going to be the starting point guard, well, then you take him. Like, it doesn't matter that he shoots 55% from the line. Like, you look at your team and you deal with that. Does he score well? Not really, but does anyone else in that area score well? No. Could he average 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.7 blocks? Could he shoot 58 from the field? Yeah, like that. None of that's unreasonable, right? Look at his numbers in the past. 16 points, like 16, 7, and 8, or whatever he averaged in Philly with over 1.5 steal and almost a block on 58 shooting. Like, those numbers are crazy. And you can get him at the end. Now, he's probably got a 5% chance of hitting those numbers. Or he's probably got a 10% chance of hitting even 50% of those numbers. But who cares? The Joneses, Tyus and Trey, are both outside the top 120 on ESPN. I'm not as high on either of these guys as some others are. But whatever. That's fine. If they are available to grab late, you do it. Both guys are likely to be starting point guards. Interestingly, Trey has an ADP of 105 on ESPN and Tyus is 136. But Tyus is ranked 85 on ESPN and Trey's ranked 124. 40 and 30 spots difference, but opposite ways. Their upside's relatively low, but when you can get good assists and they're low turnover, high steal players too, they're really good options. We've got old mate Rusty Westbrook.
Price of the brick going up.
On Fantrax and ESPN, he is available late. I think that he is going to start for the Clippers. We saw some of his stuff pull back somewhat on that team, but when you're looking at your assists off the wire or late in the draft, there's not many guys there. Now, Westbrook comes with his own unique set of problems, and by unique, I mean he's shithouse in free throw percentage and field goal percentage. He doesn't hit any threes, but he'll score, he'll get rebounds, he'll get assists, he's okay with steals, and that's all relatively useful, especially when you're looking to bump that assist late, but watch the damage you can do. Markelle Fultz, for some unknown reason, is available allegedly on ESPN late. ADP of 135, so it's not even just a bad ranking. No one's drafting him. I don't get it. He should be a top 100 guy without really any question. So those of you on ESPN, you're able to get him late, just be happy. And then Austin Reeves, similarly on ESPN, sits outside the top 120 there too. Some other assist players. Dennis Schroeder's available in all formats, in all host sites. I don't know that he's going to start. He may not. I don't think it matters that much. He's still an option to get 5 assists as a reserve, because a reserve for Schroeder doesn't mean that he's playing 19 minutes. He probably still plays 28 a night for Toronto coming off the bench, I would guess. Jaden Ivey, we talked about him already, available everywhere. Old mate, Derek White.
Maximum Derek.
I don't understand this. He's got an ADP of 118 on ESPN, a rank of 135. The other sides have him in the 70s. So, again, if you're on ESPN, and let me just throw a blanket out there, don't play on ESPN. They don't pay any attention to fantasy basketball. They don't put players into the pool of guys available to be added. Some of their interface stuff is fine, but they don't care about their product at all. And the rankings reflect that. And the lack of care to player positions, which is still a problem at Yahoo too, shows that. Don't play there. It's bad. But Derek White is available. Let's look at a rookie. Amen Thompson. You probably don't need to draft him, but he's actually the perfect guy to draft. Last round, he's a rookie. He can help assists. He might help steals. He probably doesn't play anywhere near enough to begin the season, and you might end up dropping him. But that's what you want to do with a last pick. Hey, let's see. What if he beats out Kevin Porter or Jalen Green? Or he's just too good and he's better than Dylan Brooks? What if all that happens? It's a low chance. What if it happens? We love that upside. Jordan Clarkson's an option. And then Mike Conley. Now, I don't love Mike Conley to draft in late rounds at all. There's no upside on him whatsoever. But again, if you took like an upside guy around 10, you go, well, my sister is struggling somewhat here. Grab Conley around 11 and then go back to upside 12 and 13. I think there's something to that. Let's take a look at steals. Matisse Thybulle, obvious one. We know he's going to score 5 points a game. I don't know if he's going to start or not. He's a great shot blocker out of position, but when you're looking for steals off the wire, he's there. DeAnthony Melton, actually on Fantrax and ESPN's allegedly available outside the top 120. I used to be one of the biggest Melton fans in the world. I still am a big Melton fan, but it feels that others have just completely jumped the shark in terms of... Well, jump the shark sounds like I'm being offensive. I'm not. They've just jumped ahead of me into being a little bit more hopeful and wishful of what Melton's role is going to be. Harden might hold out. That is true. Harden might get traded. That is also true. But if Harden gets traded, I wouldn't think that Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey are trading Harden just so that Melton can start. I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm less... And he is really, honestly, a steal specialist. He can do some other things. He can hit some threes. He's better at that now. But he's not this high-volume guy, and we saw his minutes all trend down at the end of last season. But getting him late, sure, love it. I just wouldn't want to go top 100. Herbalife Jones, available everywhere late. And there will be people who start to push him up. Because like, oh, Trey Murphy's out. That must mean a bump for Herb Jones. And theoretically, yeah, it's a bump for Herb Jones based on where he was projected a week ago. But remember this. Last season, Zion and Ingram did not combine for 80 games. And Herb Jones didn't do well. He had ample opportunity with both Zion and Ingram out for large periods of time. And we enter the season with both of those guys healthy and ready to go, and just Trey Murphy not there. So Herb's going to get his steals, but he's not going to do anything else. Now, I guess the thing is, if Trey and then Zion and then Ingram all go down in the first month or two of the season, then that does help Herb. But the situation for Herb last season, I think, is actually better than what it currently is now, despite Trey Murphy going out. Ben Simmons, good steals guy. The rabbit hunter, Alex Caruso.
Be very quiet. I'm hunting rabbits.
Excellent steals player, excellent real-life basketball player. Can't really stay healthy with his crash bash style of play, and there's a million other players on that rotation. He's never going to get 30 plus, I don't think. 26, 27, but a great steals guy. And Tyus Jones is an option there late as well. What happened there? Let's go back to bringing up the next. There we go. Steals. What about the other Thompson?
I think he's talking to you.
Asar. Available everywhere late. Probably more of a chance of starting than Amen because his competition is Bojan Bogdanovic and Isaiah Stewart. So, yeah, he's worth the grab late. The Shark. Bruce Brown.
Baby shark,
Fantrax has his ADP higher, but on Yahoo and on ESPN, you can get him late. He's going to start, I believe, for Indiana. He's not going to have as much ball handling responsibilities as he had last season, but he's great. Markel Fultz, talked about him already. Tariq Eason's available everywhere late, and it is hard to get him minutes. Brooks, Smith, Şengün. How does Eason play 28? I don't really see it. But I absolutely love taking him late. What if he beats out Jabari Smith for the starting job? What if Şengün is not to the taste of Udoka and Eason and Smith play a lot of 4-5 together? He's an unbelievable late pick. Jalen Suggs, one of the best defensive guards in the NBA and one of the worst offensive guards in the NBA. Got a chance to start or be at least somewhere in a decent role for Orlando. They haven't given up on him, even though everyone else has. He's a great steals player, available everywhere. And then Delon Wright, legendary top 60 alleged fantasy rank player last season. He is not going to start because Tyus and Jordan Poole are ahead of him. There's Kispert, there's Johnny Davis in that rotation too, but Wright's going to play. He's going to play 20 more minutes. Minimum, I would guess. And last season and the season before, he averaged over 3 steals per 100 possessions. He's an excellent steals guy, showing again that you don't have to necessarily reach up for steals. Because Suggsy or Wrighty or Asar or Thibault, these guys are available off the wire to help you win in that category on a week-to-week basis. Blocks. A lot of the centers are ranked just terribly on ESPN. So, Gafford, Mitch Robinson, and Onyeka Okongwu all outside top 120. Insane stuff, but it's true. Then you got Mark Williams, who's also insane on Yahoo and ESPN. These are all excellent block options, unbelievable block options. If you want to talk about someone who's just never going to be drafted, though, Isaiah Jackson might still get you 1.2, 1.3 blocks in 18 minutes. Now, the problem with Isaiah Jackson is what if he is not even the backup and they play sticks there? Oh, I haven't done this one for a while.
Stand by your man!
And then Jackson doesn't play. But if he does play, or even Smith's a pretty good shot blocker. Both of those guys are interesting options to get blocks. Zubats is available late on ESPN drafts as well. He can help you win those blocks category, or not win them, help you contribute to the blocks category. And then there's probably my favorite last round pick is Paul Reed. I'm clinging to one bit of information, and that is Nick Nurse wants me to be Pascal Siakam. That's very interesting, Paul, because who plays at power forward? It's a million years old PJ Tucker. Okay. So if Reedy can get 12 minutes at power forward, 12 minutes at center, or even more at power forward, well, he's a top 70 player. And that is the absolute perfect way to approach a last round. Drew Eubanks is a good block streamer behind Ayton in Phoenix. Jabari Smith's available late on ESPN. I don't really understand why that is, but he is. Pat Williams, another guy that I got late for $1 in that auction mock the other day. I don't have gigantic faith in Pat Williams. I worry about his scalability offensively, mainly because they still have their 3 usage guys in Vooch, DeRozan, and Levine. But hopefully he's established himself. He lost his starting job to Javonte Green last season. That's bad, man. But he is a good 3-point shooter on low volume. He's a good steals and blocks player, and he's available late and maybe even off the wire. There's Big Dick Nick in Charlotte. I think he's going to get like 17, 18 a night. And he can block a shot a game in that time. And then there is the passport legend once more, Jalen Duren, who sits there on ESPN outside the top 120. Let's look at field goal percentage. This is not based just on percentage. It's based on volume incorporated as well. A lot of the same names, Dan Gafford, Mark Williams, Jalen Duren, and Onyeka Okongwu, Ivica Zubats, Mitchell Robinson. All available relatively late. Nearly all of them on ESPN because they just have no idea how to position centers. Which, I'll be a little bit more honest there. Like, centers do get overrated a lot in fantasy rankings. So them pushing centers back, I respect. I just think they've pushed these guys back way too far. Some other field goal percentage players, Mason Plumlee, the old cockroach. He is available everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be more, let's phrase it this way. I would be more surprised if Plumlee plays 18 and Zubats plays 30 than I would be if it's a straight 24-24 split. The cockroach won't be as good as he was in Charlotte. For some God knows reason, Steve Clifford was going, all right, Mace, we're going nowhere. How about you roll out there for 33 minutes so we can bump your trade value to get a second-round pick back? That's what he did, though. And he's not going to do that for the Clippers. But he's still going to be okay. Big Rashawn Holmes. Is he going to start over Dwight Powell? I don't know. What we mainly need to know is he going to play 30 minutes? And there is a chance of it. So he's a good later pick option. Benny Simmons. And then the aforementioned Dwight Powell as well, who probably one of the only things he does well from fantasy is good field goal percentage. Nick Richards and Steve Adams as well. And you can see all of those guys, Plumlee, Holmes, Simmons, Powell, Richards, Adams, are outside the top 120 on both or all three Yahoo Fantrax and ESPN formats. Let's look at some free throw percentage, guys. These often can be harder to find late, but maybe not quite as much this season because there's a couple of guys here who are very high volume players. Austin Reeves is one of them, available late on ESPN. Bojan Bogdanovic probably doesn't get quite as many trips to the line as he did last season in Detroit, but he's an excellent shooter, and he's available on Yahoo and Fantrax. We've got Ken Murphy there as well.
There is no just Ken.
Sorry, it's Trey Murphy. He's a late round guy that is a 90% free throw shooter last season. Ben Mathurin, available late everywhere. Guess the line a ton as a rookie. Malik Monk, good free throw shooter, good volume as well. And the pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. Now, Harrison Barnes in general is one of the worst picks you can make in the last round. There is zero upside and he's boring as shit. But as I said, if you've gone upside in some other spots and you go, actually probably need a little bit of help in free throws, he can do that. There's no real other upside to his game, and it's going to depend a lot on what you've done in other rounds. But Barnes is a guy that is rightfully available late that might be able to do something for you. What about, and I mentioned this one just because I don't really know what his role is going to be, but the Italian cock, Danilo Gallinari.
Hands off my cock!
Should be the backup to Kyle Kuzma, I expect, in Washington, I guess. He's excellent at getting to the line, but he's 35 and he's coming off an ACL injury. And he's could be a 90% shooter. The volume and the minutes aren't probably going to be very high and he's probably going to sit a lot of games. But is he the most forgotten player this season that's now on the Wizards, or is it Landry Shamet? It's probably Shamet, but it's close. Cam Thomas, also a pretty good free throw percentage guy. Is he going to be in the rotation over Lonnie Walker? I don't know. But it could be an option for you. Cole Anthony's a good free throw guy who's available everywhere late. Minutes are really capped there in Orlando, but I do believe that they'd be looking for a trade for him, and he could actually really push up if that happens. Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, available everywhere late. Now, we worry a lot about Brogdon's elbow, but there's a lot of guard minutes available in Boston. I don't think they're going to push him 31-32 because his body can't really handle that. But he's a really good free throw guy, and he's a good option later in the draft. And then Kobe White, much like Cole Anthony, I see these guys as very much the same. Scoring upside, some assist upside, great free throw value, hit threes, but they're in a situation where there's just too many other guards around and they're squashed in. And if they find their way into another team, probably Quickly's in this mix as well. If they find their way to another team, they could really be top 100 guys. But he can already help you in free throw percentage. And the last thing I look at is just a quick 6 names in 3-point percentage that are available late in drafts. And if that's one of your categories, these guys can help. Of course, the Duck Luke Kennard's there. Trey Murphy is there. Corey Kispert's there. Sam Hauser, he's going to have to play minutes on this Celtics team, and he's an elite 3-point shooter. And there's Keegan Murray. And the last one I want to talk about is Javon Carter in Chicago, who I think will start, is available late. I don't think he's got high upside because of White's presence and Desumu's presence and Caruso's presence. Limits Carter's overall upside, but he can get some assists, he can hit some threes, and he can be really efficient, and his 3-point percentage has been good. Also, yeah, he's great at steals. So he's an interesting guy late as well. And that will do it for me today. Don't forget, follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And on YouTube, thumb it up, please. Leave your comments down below. Some exciting stuff coming. And if you hit the bell, you'll never miss them. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.
Where's the cheese?